what I'm gonna say to that is be prepared. Is nay all with dick, right?
Why did I somewhere in the back of my head know that that phrase was coming? I think I probably
That's your
said that in my
secret magic
mind somewhere.
powers. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's what I did.
Wonderful,
It's
wonderful,
like right? Um,
wonderful.
so I am Neros, right? Um, Neros Asher official, as I like to say, right? Because it recently became official, right? Like that is
Nice,
my name, right? Like court
wonderful.
stamp and everything. Um, and I am a woman of the trans, feminine, transgender experience, right? Um, I like to say I am a woman. I am not a female, but I am a woman, right? Um, of a unique configuration, although it's not a unique thing. There are a gazillion of us on the planet, right?
Yeah,
Um, and I also like to say that we are not phenomena, right? Like we've been here for time, since time immemorial, right? Um, you can find examples of us all through nature, right? Plant life and other animals and other mammals, other, blah, 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 right? Um, what is all that about that I'm saying? And really quickly, feel free, right, to say, well, what do you mean? Or like explain that further. Feel free,
yeah.
right? I'm here
I
for
and
it.
I mean, in my head, I mean, you might be the first person, definitely the first person on here, first person I've at least, had a conversation with, and I'm not an anomaly by any means. In my previous life, I was a teacher, and I was an anomaly just because I was a male teacher. I'm a tattoo teacher. Um, there was those things that go along with it, but not this big defining thing that you see in politics and national news. So I might just ask those questions, and I thank you and I appreciate you if you're opening up the space for that. Really, because I think anytime I see those kind of conversations, online or in the news, and you see the hate that goes along with it, or the just the rhetoric along with it, that's unfortunate with anything that we don't understand. Nobody stops and goes, well, hold on, I might be upset about this because I don't understand it. And so it's beautiful to say that right at the beginning, that I wish that somebody would just pause and go, I I don't know what you're talking about. And then on the
Hmm.
receiving end, somebody says just that.
Hmm.
Let
Hmm.
me help you understand that, because that's what I
Yeah,
hope to do here with
yeah.
mental health.
Let me help you
So it's
understand
beautiful.
and let me understand, right?
Yeah,
The pieces
I
that I
we
need to understand, right?
there's so much power in just saying I don't know, and there's so much vulnerability and strength with that.
Yeah,
So
because how
thank
much
you.
is there that we don't, right? Like how much is there that we don't know, right?
Yeah,
And that would make things so much like easier, right?
yeah, everyone.
So much more digestible,
Yeah.
right? Right? Um, and
And
you
you don't
know,
have to like what they're going to say. You don't have to agree with it. But now you
right?
can at least now there's at least a reason why you don't. If that's the
Mhm.
case, or you might be surprised and go, you know what, that made a lot of sense, and I don't know what I was thinking. Like you
Mhm.
just didn't give yourself a chance to do
Give
that.
yourself the option,
Yeah.
right? Be kind to
So
yourself and give yourself
yeah.
the option. The yes, no, maybe, right? Um, and you know
So
what
what's
drives
yeah
me, right? What drove me to say, "Oh, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna try to do that." Right? Is that, or one of the things that's driving me is, and let me preface this with, I do not have a Jesus complex, right? I am no Messiah. I am no Savior. I am one of many people around the planet driven by a similar thing, right? And that thing is to normalize, right? In the minds of the folks, normalize the presence of folks like myself, right? On
yeah
one hand, it's annoying because literally I'm just a human,
yeah
uniquely configured, right?
figured.
As we
I like
all
that
are,
word. Yeah.
right? Uniquely, like I don't believe there's such a thing as a special human, right? Because if there was a special human, then each of us would be a special human. But what we are
Yeah.
is uniquely
You mean,
configured. Like none of us has a identical what is that, fingerprint, right?
fingerprint?
And none of
Yeah,
us has an identical tone to our voice, right? We each have
it's
our
very true.
own specific tone, our own specific fingerprint. With that
Yeah,
said, I think it is safe to assume to like accept ish, maybe even the idea that perhaps we are each
maybe there's something there.
uniquely
Yeah,
configured because even within the trans community, right, there is such a diversity,
yeah,
right? Like there's no one of us are the same, right?
yeah,
Like there are, I mean, there are like that there's a diversity, there's even a maintenance of certain ideologies, right? Hurtful as they may be, even within this community, right? It's a
yeah,
community that contains Asian folks, Black folks, white folks, Latino folks of all the varieties, right? Right?
yeah,
Um, and what's my point? My point is just that like a rose garden, right? Like there's gorgeous rose garden in San Diego, right? And to walk through, you see that like there's not just that one red rose that is the beautiful, the pretty thing.
yeah,
I mean, they come like that. They come in a variety of colors. They come in a variety of a combination of colors, right? They come some like that. Some are more floppy and flat, right? Right. Um, but so are the humans,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So are the humans. And why wouldn't we be,
Why
right?
wouldn't we
It's
be?
the
Is right,
promise
right?
of this thing that like seems to enjoy a diversified experience, right?
Yeah,
So with that said, right, I one leg is to assist in that process of like normalizing the presence of such of folks such as myself, right? Another piece is to say to folks such as myself and other folks that happen to find themselves under the sound of my voice to say you're not alone. This shit is hard.
yeah,
This living thing, it is hard,
hard.
right? Please don't pay those legislators any mind unless they're
Yeah,
saying something that's going to benefit humans in general. Like, please don't pay them no mind, right?
mm,
Because, right, I live with my own mental health challenges, right, with my own insecurities, right, right. Let it just be known that, like, honestly, like, I don't have the time to deal with your insecurities
no,
thrust upon me, right? Like I don't have the time to deal with your vitriol thrust upon me, right? And where does it come from? Where
yeah,
is it coming from, right? It's an idea adopted 9 times, 10 times out of 10, right?
yeah.
Vitriol is an idea
Something.
adopted, right? And the things that these people are saying, these legislators, it's better yet, what they're doing is violence. It's violence, right? It's we think of violence. I think that I'm speculating. I'm going to say I'm speculating a little bit, but I think that we think of violence in the way of like physical, right?
Sure.
Right?
Immediately, right?
But it goes far beyond that. It goes
Oh,
further
absolutely.
than that, right? And I could break a bone and it's gonna hurt, right? But that bone's gonna heal, right? But that bone is gonna heal, arguably, much more quickly
Quickly.
than my emotional state. It's going to
Sure.
heal much more
Absolutely
quickly than my
will.
mental state, right? I am a person legitimately diagnosed with PTSD, you know, a thing we often like associate to folks coming back from wars, right? From Vietnam, from
Yeah,
Afghanistan,
there's another one, right?
right?
That we immediately have a quick association of where that came from, and there's so many different avenues.
Right. But what about the war, right, that happens here, right?
Yeah,
What about the war that, like, arguably, right, trans folks are having to deal with at, in this moment, right?
yeah,
Additionally, like, I am a Black person, right? I do not identify as African American, right? I understand my lineage, right? And I understand my genetic lineage, right? But I have no, other than that, right? My life has no connection to Africa, right? And largely what I am seeing in as the in the what I am seeing as in the world is a black person, right? And in
Yeah.
fact, you see a black person before you see a trans
You
person,
see.
right?
Yeah.
So therefore, like how you treat me or don't treat me or think of me or don't think of me, that's the that's
Comes
the
first.
initial
Yeah.
draw, right? Um, I grew up in a series of group homes and foster homes, right? Um, I was thrust into that thing, right? Or I was actually better yet, it was handed over into that thing by an aunt that was an aunt by marriage, right? And I think that's an interesting, thing to note, right?
Yeah.
Because the same aunt eventually adopted other children, right?
Ah, interesting.
Which was
Okay.
something that required processing, right? Which was
Sure.
something that was hurtful, right? Even though I
Yeah.
was an adult, right? When the children that were adopted came into the world, I was an adult, right? Um, so why would that be hurtful, though, right? Um, because apparently the family that that I was born a member to, right, was fairly expansive, right? And even in the city where I'm from, right, had a bit of a name, right? Um, like they weren't like aristocrats or anything like that, like nothing quite fancy and glamorous, right? But no, right? And so I can never quite justify, well, how did I end up,
Why?
right? Like
Yeah.
nobody had any room, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I
Hmm.
am a survivor of domestic violence, right? And this started from the time of my childhood, right? And it's another piece, right? We think of domestic violence and we see the wife with the black eye, right? And well, again, domestic violence, much like PTSD, is far more expansive.
Noir more.
It happens to children, right?
Sure.
Um, a variety of abusive experiences, right? Um, I was not diagnosed until 2016, right? So, mind you, I spent much of my life, and let me also note that there was one foster home that I was in for a significant period of time, right? Like a chunk of my upbringing, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Um, And not only that one, but in that foster home, the physical and the verbal abuse, right? When it started, and I say when it started, but I say when it started, when I say when it started is when I realized it, right?
I was gonna
When
say,
it came,
is
when I
that
was
where
just
you're
like,
going
oh, wait
for
a
that?
minute.
When you realize like what was actually happening? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and not even having the ability to articulate those things as I do today, right?
Yeah.
Um, and what did I do, right? I just worked
Yeah.
hard to try to get these people to love me, right, and to want
Yeah.
them to be there, right, right. Like we would go to North Carolina for like family reunions, but they were their family reunions. They were never mine,
Y-
right?
Yeah.
I would go to my so-called aunt's house where my cousins were, but it wasn't my aunt,
They
and
weren't.
those weren't my
Yeah.
cousins, right? And when I say that, I mean that in the way that I always felt like an outsider, right? Like I never
Okay.
felt like part of the family, right? And like today, I can recognize that. Well, number one, I never was, right? And number
Yeah.
two, there was never necessarily an attempt to make to have
Make
me
you feel that
feel
way.
woven in, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, I was never adopted, right? Um, which was another thing that I had to justify, like, or at least attempt to justify, like in my mind, like,
Yeah.
why don't like, right? Like, why don't I
Yeah.
have your name, right? Like, why do I call you this thing, but really you're not that thing,
But you're not
right?
that thing.
Like I can call you mama, but you're really not, right? And you treat
Yeah.
me in a way that reinforces that you are not,
Yeah.
right?
And you have that awareness too that that's kind of what's going on. I mean, that's kind of
Hmm.
big to feel that way, you know.
Hmm. Oh my gosh, it's crazy, right? So I became a runaway when I was 15, and I went from the city that I was from across the country. Right, so I went from the East Coast to the West Coast. Right, snuck on a Greyhound bus, and didn't get found out until Texas. Right, I'll never forget it in my life until Texas. And there was a significant number of miles between where I came from and
Yeah.
Texas. Right, um, I ended up going back because I freaked and I was just like, well, I don't know what to do. Right. So I ended up going back. I called, collect, and was just like, And I got put on a bus and there was a whole series of events. And then I went back. Right. But here's what really stands out in that period of time um, was that nobody ever asked me why I did that.
Why?
Right. Nobody ever asked me why I did that. And I got all kinds of, well, if you do that again, I'm gonna pop, 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 do, 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 do,
Yeah.
do. Right, right. I even had a principal of a high school, because I was in high school, right, at the time, say, if you do that again, we're gonna send you um, to what was the boys' school, right, to the the delinquents school, right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna name it Dickies, right? She was like, I'm gonna send you to Dickies, right? But here's what I never understood is why she never asked me why I did that, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Because it comes with
Today,
a loaded answer. You actually have to do something when you ask that question why, and you're gonna you could tell. And I'm sure back then you had at least a little bit of awareness too.
well,
Uh,
mandated
that question, that answer
reporting.
gets received, and it's like, okay, I've got to do more than just check a box or put you here.
Huh?
There's actual work, and we're afraid of
Yeah,
work sometimes. Not
yeah.
sometimes, all the time.
Heck yeah. Heck yes. Because at that point, I was still getting my butt beat, right, with
Yeah.
things that are classifiably weapons, right?
Yeah.
Right. And for a number of years, I mean, and I had had my fair share of like getting my butt beat like a grown person at that point. Right. Right. Um, and you can't really, but you kind of think I'm a slender person, right? I think you can anyway. Um, so
Yes.
you can imagine I was a green bean, right? Like I
Yeah.
was, right? Um,
Yeah.
and there's no justification. In middle school, one
It's
time,
done.
right? Went to school with black eye, right? And I told everybody, because we did actually have rabbits at the time, and I told everybody that my eye was black because I was chasing the rabbit and the rabbit peed and the pee got in my eye, and that's why that happened. As an adult, I understand the absurdity of that story.
Yeah.
Right?
But you also at that time were aware of what that could mean by being honest about something, and fearful of that
And
answer
sheer
that's going to come when you open up.
embarrassment, right? And
Yeah.
sheer embarrassment, right? Like, I can't tell these people I got my butt beat because I'm not supposed to get my butt beat, right?
Yeah.
That's not the reason why, right? But at that time, in my kid's mind, right, as a child, I'm
Yeah.
more embarrassed that this eye is black and I can't have these
Yeah.
people who are already picking on me every day of the week, right?
Have
Right?
another reason, have
Have
another
another
weapon in
reason
their
to pick on
arsenal.
me.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot do that, right? Um, And then the foster parent, I'm just going to say the foster parent, comes up to the school that day. Actually, I don't remember why, but she comes up to the school that day and She said straight in front of the class, I'll never forget it, right? She said straight in front of the class to the teacher, though, oh yeah, I beat his ass. But I'm a
Sure.
kid, right? So
You're a
I'm so
kid.
embarrassed that now the class knows that get I'm gonna call what I'm gonna call spankings. Clearly, we're
Yeah.
not, right?
A little bit
Um,
more than that.
I'm
Yeah.
so embarrassed by that, right? Now I'm
Yeah.
just like, now not only are they gonna pick on me about my clothing, right? Not only are they gonna pick on me about this thing and the other thing, but now they're gonna pick on me about
Now they
that
got
because
something
now they
else.
know. Because I can't even deny. I can, and at that time I didn't have this language, right? But in my kid's voice, right? I can't even deny it because she just told the whole class because she just told the
Yeah.
teacher in front of the class. But in a day such as this, right, where I went to
Yeah.
college, right? I eventually went to college, and my little degree is in human services, right? So I know about this little thing called mandated reporting, right? And it just so happens that I even know about that little thing called mandated reporting was in effect at that time.
At that time.
At that time, right? Right. So that just really just kind of salt to the wound when I
Yeah.
learned that. And I realized that, wow,
Yeah.
crazy. I had no allies,
Yeah.
right? Not even
Yeah.
the teacher, right? Who happened, by the way, to look like me, right? And I'm not talking about my
Interesting.
womanness, right? Right.
Right.
I'm, I'm just saying,
Phew.
right? Like
Yeah. So all those moments of you keep saying the same thing there, that like you keep having to ask yourself, you keep forced into the situation of having yourself, well, why am I put here, and why don't you feel this way, or why don't you want to connect me in that way, or why am I not, why aren't you my mom, really, all those moments where you're having to constantly being, address the question of, well, why not, how has that impacted you today, looking back, and where do you find yourself, where did you find the strength, I guess the best way to put it, to answer that question, I guess, for yourself eventually, and not be embarrassed by the fact that, like, that was somebody else that didn't want to answer that question, but you get to now, and you get to find value. How did you find the strength in that answer eventually?
You know what I decided one day, and it was actually the thing that drove my decision to go to school, um, ultimate with an ultimate at that time goal to become a social worker, was because I
Yeah.
felt like number one, there's got to be a reason for the series of events that I know is my life.
Yeah.
Right? There has to be a reason for that beyond, right? Just that people are mean, right? Just beyond that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and folks need to know that they're not alone. The very thing you said, like
Yeah.
earlier on, right? You're not alone, right? And I just so happen to not need to know your name or see your face to genuinely and authentically appreciate and love you. And it's
Yeah.
and it's and it's organic
Yeah.
form, right? I'm not talking
Yeah.
about like love, how we like how we use that word and we just sort of toss it around like, oh my God, I love you, right? No, you don't even know me, right? But I love you in the agape sense. I love you because
Yeah.
the thing that created me and it makes me, and for whatever reason keeps me on this plane of existence, right? Does also the same thing for you, right?
Yeah.
How I know that I am a unique configuration, I know that you are too, and
Yeah.
within your unique configuration, you got some stuff in there that only you can do, right? Now that I laugh, right? Because I
Yeah.
know you got some tricks in your bag, some cool stuff, right? And I'm interested in it. Like, and I I'm on Instagram, right? And but I use my Instagram for motivational purposes, right? I'm a self-titled motivational performance artist, right? So what does that mean, right? What I do, so like I'm a vocalist, right? Like I sing, right? I'm an actress. I'm a thespian. Um, I'm motivational. I'm motivational. I don't like to say I'm a motivational speaker, but I am, right? I
Sure.
am. I don't know why I don't
Yeah.
like to say that, right? But I am, right? And one of the
Yeah.
things that that I say is follow your dreams because they're in there. There's not one human on the planet without a dream, right? At least one, and I
Yeah.
would say there's multiple, right? Um, because that dream is yours and yours alone. But that dream, I also believe, because we're actually just one great big jigsaw puzzle, somehow it
It all
interlocks
fits.
with somebody else's dream.
Yeah.
And it doesn't lose value in that interlock, right? Because you like if you look at a jigsaw puzzle and how they like that,
Yeah.
that's how you are. You're your own configuration, and
Its own configuration.
your dreams are their own configuration, and they're meant to do this thing because we didn't come
Yeah.
here to be little islands, right? And to
Yeah.
do that is you loving you. It's you getting to know you. Because in order to do
Yeah.
that, you have to be you authentically. And that's hard, but it's worth it.
It is hard.
It is hard.
What 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 advice did you pick up on, or did you hear, or find along the way to be able to say that now? Because you could very easily have just said, you know what, nobody seems to care about me. I don't care about you either. But we don't talk enough about the fact that there are stories that didn't happen. It went the other direction, and here's one of them right here.
Mhm,
What along the way, maybe it was one moment, maybe it's 1,000 moments, cause you to have that other people are missing, along their journey in this universe, that could make them go this direction and say, you know what, those people in my life didn't love me. I'm still going to love everybody else.
mhm, mhm. Um, I think really, I think that it real. I think it's many things, really, right?
Yeah.
I think it is. I think it's my ability to blush. Still, I just turned 48 last month, right? I still blush. I giggle, right? I giggle. I giggle. And sometimes when I giggle, like somebody will say something or a certain thing will, happen, and I will giggle out loud. Like it will just be like, like it'll just come out. Like I can't really replicate, like it'll just come out, right? But I reflect on that ability to be able to do that,
Yeah.
right? Transitioning, right? Because it's not a choice, right? Because
Mm-mm.
one day Nay was just like, to my former, was just like, hun, I'm emerging. That's what's happening. I'm emerging. And
Mm.
you know, you're going to either go with it or I'm gonna hurt you. I don't wanna hurt you, but it's gonna hurt. It's like it's like when the baby's ready to come, the baby's ready to come. And if you don't let that baby out, think it baby's gonna hurt you. Baby's not gonna intend to,
Yeah.
but baby's gonna hurt you because
Yeah.
baby's ready to come out. You cannot
Yeah.
you can't stop the labor. And this is coming from a person who does
Yeah.
not have children, is not a parent. Right? I got a little doggy, right? Not at all the same, right? Um, but you cannot stop. You could try if you so choose, right?
Yeah.
That's where the choosing comes in, right? You don't choose to be what you are, right? You choose to allow or you choose to disallow, right?
Yeah.
um and in my choosing to allow, right, and of the negative experiences that I've had, right, overwhelmingly I've been affirmed, right? Overwhelmingly I've been affirmed, right? um I lost my job back in the summer because I was basically I was targeted, right, by a staff person, and actually by the founder, right, of the organization that I worked for, right, and they each concocted falsehoods, right. Every time I say falsehood, something in me wants to say, "Dude, why don't you just say they both told lies?" Right? But I like to say they each concocted falsehoods, and that was just hurtful,
Yeah.
right?
It's hard.
you have chosen literally to attack me without provocation, right?
Yeah.
Because literally the only thing that you could call the provoking element was my presence, and
Yeah. Sorry.
that's just not a provoking thing. And if it
Yeah.
is, right, if it is,
Yeah.
then the necessary inquiries aren't mine,
Yeah.
right? They aren't mine, right? And anyway, right? But it's a it's a lot of things, right? It's my ability to, and don't get me wrong, like I still have my days where I'm like, oh my gosh, humans. Oh, like I love you, but I hate you. Like
Yeah.
you're
It's
so
just
mean to
natural.
me,
Yeah.
right? I still have those days, right? I still have to navigate that, right? I'm a person legitimately diagnosed. In fact, that was my psychiatrist, right? Um, with um, something depressive disorder, major depressive disorder, right? And this is the thing that I navigate on a daily basis,
Yeah.
right? Right? And because those thoughts, right? Because here's what it is. Here's the other piece, right? Is because in my journey, what I've learned is that these experiences, they affect your wiring, right?
Sure.
It's not just that something happened and that you just need to get over it, right? It's literally affected your wiring,
Sure.
right? Right? Like we have to be mindful of like especially abused children, right? Because like abused as a child at a time when this thing, right, inside of here, right, it's weaving itself
Does something
together,
different.
right? Now, granted, it continues to do that, right, all
And
through
it
your
will.
life, right?
Yeah.
But we should be mindful of how we're treating the children, right?
Oh yeah.
Because when you
I
hurt a
see it every
child,
day. Yeah.
right, you are literally affecting their weaving process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there are many. I think that I know better yet. What drives me is entirely multi-pronged, right? But right, but and let me just toss into the bag, right? That it's been over a year now, right? But I attempted to take my own life, right? I did, I did, and luckily I was unsuccessful, right? And clearly I was unsuccessful. Um,
And thankfully, yeah.
and thankfully, right, right, and thankfully, and some things occurred to me post. Right, I went into a hospital and I stayed in the hospital for some time. Um, but post the hospital is when like certain enlightenments really came to the fore. Right, one being that your life is not your own to take. Right,
Yeah.
and you're alive for a reason, and you need to go do
Yeah.
that. Right, you need to let Nay out, right? Because it wasn't me actually, it was my former who did that.
Yeah.
Let me just be clear. As schizophrenic as that may sound, right? But um, but it was an enlightening post. You know what? I'm gonna call the whole thing an enlightening experience, right? Um, because it also said, right? It's like it highlighted in some sense, no, in a big sense, really, that I love you,
Yeah.
right? Don't do that no more
Beautiful.
because I love you.
Yeah.
Because I love you. And I understand why you did that, right? Don't do
Yeah.
that no more because I love you and you're in the right? And you got shit to do, right? Right. And you can't do that if you're
Beautiful.
in a box in the ground. So don't do that no more. And I love you, period. That's the love you need the most, right?
Beautiful.
So what's my biggest tip? Fill your cup. Fill your cup first. Keep filling that cup, right? And when you get solid in filling your cup, right? Hopefully to overflowing. That's what we're driving for. That's what we're pushing for. then you start to take that cup and tip a little bit into somebody else's, because that's the other space that we have to get to, because it's part of it, right? And I'm gonna wrap my stuff up because much like yourself, I can't go, right? Um, our healing is not only individual, it is collective.